Hey YouTube, thanks for watching another one of these dumbass videos on how I finally got through another exam. But this one actually was pretty tough for me. It took me less than 2 months of studying, but I did take the exam 4 times. So it was a tough exam, right? Like I do have a technical background, and I have done a lot of things with networking in the past, but never as a network engineer, never had to like log into switches and routers on a regular basis to configure anything besides SNMP for monitoring and things like that. But yeah, so for me, like the terminology wasn't all brand new, but just the operations, right? Like the fundamentals of how packets traverse a network or switching in layer 2, 3, 4, you know, like how the different technologies and things like that. And the number one thing, right, subnetting, right? Like I had thought I understood networking. I've been doing this shit for a long time, right? I got my first job back in 2007, so I can't even count how many years ago that was. And I've been touching networking here or there. I even went to college for a year or so and studied networking. Cisco Netacad, right? Back in the day, back in 2005, well before a lot of the things that you're studying now were even on the exam. And it just, you know, it was just something that I never felt like I fully grasped networking. I didn't really understand like frame switching and packets and routing and all of that shit. But you know, I've been lucky enough to be working for Cisco for the last almost 3 years now, and they allow us to take these damn exams for free. I'm gonna be honest, that is the only reason why I thought about picking this back up in my current role. It's not really necessary, right? I do manage a group of a bunch of network support engineers, and they all know this shit backwards and forwards, right? They come in and happy that they're passing another Cisco exam every day, right? Your high level exams, your CCNPs and IEs and all that good stuff. So being around all these folks, it kind of gave me that itch again to think like, hey, what can I do? Made me think like, hey, yeah, I understand what they're talking about. I could probably go and finally take the CCNA IT for a long time. So it's not that I didn't understand networking like the high level, right? I could jump into a switch and configure a VLAN or see what's going on, you know, in a firewall, add some things to an ACL, do some one-to-one NATing, like, you know, little things like that. Never really had any issue with that. But whenever there was like if we needed to spin up a new site or there was a new server that needed a special static route to make sure that it can get over to the backup network or something like that to run its nightly backups and not interfere with the bandwidth during with the other traffic, right? Things like that I would never even look at, right? People would say QoS to me, and I would just think like, yeah, you want to make a phone call, right? I didn't really understand what any of that stuff really meant. But because I had heard of it all high level and I had a pretty solid understanding, and the test being free, I thought, I'm gonna just take this test, right? Like I turned on LinkedIn Learning again, which is one of my favorite tools to use for studying. And of course, they have tons of videos on all things routing and switching. And so I chose one for the latest exam, the 200-301 CCNA exam. And I started listening to it, and it was so high level that I thought like if this is it, then I don't think I need to put in too much effort here studying. I think I'm going to lean on my experience and try to get some of these router commands that I haven't necessarily run before, right? Some of the like the PAC-P and LAC-P, some of that port channeling stuff. Like I wasn't really familiar with the commands, like understanding like what the technology did, but wasn't really familiar with the commands. So I'm like, I'm going to study a little bit of this, and I'm going to take the exam. So I booked the exam for about I think it was 11:30 at night, the first one, maybe midnight. Took it from home, and I did terribly, right? I wasn't even close. I think my score, and I'll add them to this video, I think my first score was around 675, if not lower, right? Somewhere around there. The passing score is 825. So yeah, I did terribly, and I realized that let me do some real hardcore studying. So again, I went back. Of course, you remember a couple of things on the exam that you realized that you had no idea what they were. And so I went back and looked at the LinkedIn Learning video and kind of went through it. And what I realized is that it was very, very high level. And the exam gets into the nitty gritty of networking and routing and switching, right? It's going to ask you, how do you get from one point to another point, and which path is it going to take? And you're going to have all these routing tables thrown at you, and things are going to look so familiar, and you got to be really understanding the longest match and what network prefix means, and IPv6, right? Like IPv6 is a real fucking thing. Like it is here. Like, so the exam lets you know that if you really need to understand IPv6, like how the IP address is structured, how it moves on a local network, how it moves for the larger internet, just how routing works, how subnetting works with IPv6. All that is a part of it. I don't want to scare you, right? Like the bread and butter is still IPv4 routing and subnetting, right? Like or I shouldn't say routing. Routing is the same no matter what IP protocol you use. But subnetting, that shit is tough. Like it took me so many different sources to really understand subnetting, right? And like I understand it now. Like I think I can look at some IP addresses, I can look at a subnet mask, I can look at the CIDR notation, and I understand like what it's trying to tell me, like how many, I can kind of get an understanding of the block size and like how many usable IP addresses, right, from looking at it. But if I really had to, if someone gave me a block of IPs and said like, I need you to subnet this and give this location a bunch of these IPs, and we need to give this person a bunch of IPs, we need a one-to-one NAT here, it's gonna take me a little while to write it all out. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just gonna go to the internet, right? Like no network engineer is really legitimately is gonna sit down and I shouldn't say that, right? There's a lot of folks out here, but most folks aren't gonna grab a pencil and paper and start subnetting, right? You're gonna go to your favorite website. You're gonna put in what you need, and it's gonna spit out everything you need. But you can't do that for the test. So you really, really, really need to know it, right? So I thought that maybe high level. I've seen a lot of IP addresses. I've configured a lot of devices. I'll be able to figure this out. Don't do that. Right, like you will not be able to figure it out. Really understand subnetting. So I used a bunch of sources to really just like have it stick home, and I'll tell you the one that I like the most. But honestly, it wasn't the one that where it landed. It was because I listened to so many different sources of folks trying to explain subnetting that eventually it stuck, and then I found the trick that I like to use to help me, especially with the exam. But you still need to understand subnetting. I don't care how many tricks that you know to be able to find out what the number is. If you don't understand exactly how it works, you're not going to have a great time on that test. It's going to frustrate you. You're going to be sweating, and you're going to be mad that you took the exam before you were ready. All right, so, but I would say the best training source for me was CBT Nuggets. Those guys break it down to the simplest form. They use really good analogies. They make it fun. It's easy to watch. The tool is beautiful, right? Like the app works whether you're looking at it or not. You can conserve battery by turning the video off and just listen to these modules over and over again, which is what I recommend until you just really hammer it home. The web portal is just as good as the app. So CBT Nuggets, I really enjoyed that more than anything. The Pluralsight is right there though, like content wise and being able to get enough information without having to read a book, to be honest. Like it's all there, right? I don't read a lot of technology books. That's not the way I enjoy learning. I don't like reading a lot of white pages, right? I'm not going to these different sites and reading exactly what VLAN's about. And to be honest, I don't like building labs, right? I did not build a lab to study for CCNA. Like I said, I do have experience. I've logged into plenty of routers and switches and firewalls along my career doing different things, mainly around monitoring with SNMP. But I've never configured a route in live production or in practice, right? Like I've never configured STP or VTP or DTP or seen any of those things. I did not install Packet Tracer. I did not install GNS3, Viral, none of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying that it won't help you and that those things aren't valuable, but I'm saying that you don't need them necessarily to pass the CCNA exam, right? Pluralsight also has an amazing video training suite, right? And the subnetting topics or the subnetting videos are amazing, right? They go over it very similarly to CBT Nuggets, the same way, right? To break it down from the binary, understand how to draw out. So the one thing that Pluralsight does is they help you to draw out a cool subnet calculator, and that's one that I use. Once you understand it, you'll be able to kind of draw your own and kind of tweak it the way you want to. But if you're looking for a nice, solid template or blueprint, Pluralsight definitely has that. and it will help you. But they go over real life scenarios. If you're given an IP from your ISP, or you're given a block of IPs, or you have so many sites that are needing to need this many IPs, and how do you split them up efficiently as possible, that will be asked, right? Like things like that will be asked on the exam, right? So you really want to understand how that kind of stuff works. So again, I use CBT Nuggets, Pluralsight, Udemy. Let's get my phone. I use so many, I forgot. I use CBT Nuggets, Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy. There's not the name. It's called Percipio or Skillsoft. Percipio is the folks that makes the app, I guess. But I use Skillsoft. And also the resources available on the Cisco website, right? If you go to the Cisco website, you'll see a bunch of videos available, or the Cisco exam website. Just Google it. I also looked at a little bit of YouTube. I just anything, right? Anything I can get my hands on, and I'm not gonna lie, right? So I'm very lucky to be working at Cisco, because they provide a lot of these things for free, right? There's a lot of material out there available for us to use to try to study for the exam. But CBT Nuggets has a free trial for a month. I recommend like really getting into that before you, or if you're going to take the exam, like really take a look at that one. And if you do it right, if you gather a bunch of free resources like YouTube and things from the Cisco website, and even the free trial at LinkedIn Learning, and you get like that high level overview, you can definitely pass the exam by spending a month using that month free trial at CBT Nuggets, and just just use all the resources that you can. I strongly recommend not even thinking about pursuing the exam if you're not really solid on subnetting. And like I said, I used a bunch of different resources. I use Skillsoft, I use Udemy, I use Pluralsight, I use CBT Nuggets, I use LinkedIn Learning, I read material on the Cisco website, I watched YouTube videos, I talked to other engineers. Like I did everything to really try to get an understanding of subnetting. And I watched these same videos over and over again, right? Like probably at least 4 to 5 times each. Pluralsight, CBT Nuggets, and LinkedIn Learning. Once I got a solid understanding and the aha moment and the light bulb turned on, I went back to LinkedIn Learning, because that trick is what really will propel you to have to get through those subnetting questions relatively quickly without having to do a lot of math, right? So there are some tricks, and the trick is just remembering those 8, basically the 8 different 128, 192, 224, 240, 248, 252, 254, and then 255. You'll be all good, right? See, I just forgot. But remember, just make sure you remember those bits. And also, like, I don't know why it took me so long to realize. I think what was the hardest thing for me, well, I shouldn't say hardest, but the thing that took me the longest to grasp was that when you're turning on bits for subnetting, you start with the highest bit. For whatever reason, I always wanted to start at 0 and start my math with 0, but you start at 128 and then you kind of count backwards. So you have your 0, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. You just go the other way when you're subnetting, right? You start at 128 and then you turn on another bit. That means you're turning on the 64 bit, right? So you have on your 128 and your 64, that's 192. Once I kind of understood that, it just made it so much easier. Or I shouldn't say easier, it's the only fucking way to do it. It just made it make sense to me. I did not take any practice exams this time. That is not something I recommend. You should always take practice exams. There's so many out there. There's free ones. There's one from Cisco that I just did not want to take because it's $100. And I think that's kind of bullshit that they're charging you $100 for a fake test. But I'm sure if you download and take that practice exam, I'm sure that some of the questions are very similar to the real test. They do that so you can really understand if you're prepared or not. I do recommend taking some of those practice exams because they are always beneficial. The only reason why I didn't take any this time is because I felt like the real exam could be my practice because I didn't have to pay for them, right? But look where they got me. Maybe if I would have taken a practice exam, maybe I would have been able to get through the exam without paying at all. But because it took me 4 attempts, I did have to pay for that last attempt. So what's on the exam? Now, you know I can't share that, but what I will tell you to really look out for, what you're really going to have to spend time on, subnetting, understanding routing protocols, and understanding the difference between cost versus metric versus the hop count, right? Like really understand. For whatever reason, they still want you to understand RIP, right? But high level. You don't necessarily need to go into the nitty gritty of RIP, but you need to understand how a router is going to make its determination, right? When it looks at a routing chart, you need to understand which route is going to be added to that chart. You need to understand which path that this packet is going to take. Even if the routing chart doesn't necessarily make sense, right? Like you're looking at it and maybe those routes wouldn't be necessarily entered into a routing chart. You still want to understand, like, if that entry were there, which direction is the route or is the packet going to take, right? Because they want to know if you really understand how routing works. And switching the same way, understand how switches learn and how they forward packets and how to secure them, right? Like securing the switches is really big. Security in general is something that is, as we know, right? Like everything has some layer of security before you can do anything these days. If you understand how security works, really take that section seriously. Automation, it is the way of the world. If you haven't had a chance to really look into network automation, you will now, right? And it's cool. It is a cool thing to learn. I started my career back before automation was really a thing, right? It was all bash scripts or just any kind of text file with your router or switch or firewall commands, and you just copy and paste it. And that was the automation, right? It still took you to actually go in there and do it. Automation is important. You want to make sure that you pay attention and understand how automation is changing networking and how it's going to, be beneficial to you and in your career. Because there will be some questions on the test around automation. I would say that the bread and butter though is definitely understanding the protocols, understanding how a router makes its decisions, understanding how switching works, understanding the fundamentals in physical cabling, right? Like some cable length, speed kind of stuff is it's there, but it's not there in an abundance, but it's there enough where you're gonna have to study it, right? Because you just don't know which question you're gonna get about it. So you definitely want to spend some time on the physical layer. You want to understand how virtualization works, right? So I've had the luxury of working for a lot of different organizations and touched a lot of different things along this journey, a lot of virtualization products. So some of those questions were like second nature to me, but you really want to understand hypervisors and virtualization and just how hardware is separated and distributed in a virtualized system. Like really understand that, because there's going to be some questions regarding that for sure. Wireless. I remember back in my day, right? Like Wi-Fi wasn't really a thing like that. When I was studying technology for the first time. When I was studying technology for the first time, there was no Wi-Fi really out in the wild, so to speak. There was nothing that I can't even remember the first time. But however, like Wi-Fi is a big part of the world, as you know. I'm sure you're watching this on some kind of wireless device. Like who the hell is plugging in their laptop or their desktop computer to a wall these days? Like it just doesn't happen. So there's going to be some questions regarding how that stuff works and the different what really kind of upset me, I should say. I shouldn't say upset me, but I think what was really stumping me on the exam was there's some specifics about wireless and the different wireless technologies, the A, B, C, G, N, all those different things. Like that shit matters. Like understanding like what they do matters, and coverage and service sets. And if there's one piece of advice I will give is put the time in and study. You can pass the test in a month, right? Like, so that's the one thing I didn't touch on. You can absolutely pass the test in a month, especially if you have some prior knowledge or experience in the industry at all, like any kind of knowledge or experience of how networking devices work, what a firewall, load balancer, switch, those kind of things are. It'll probably take you less than a month, right? If you study every day and you really watch those videos and go hard on your note taking and understanding of subnetting and routing, you'll be able to pass the exam. But this isn't one of those exams that you're just going to be able to skate by. I would definitely put in the effort and use all the resources available. I watch these same videos over and over and over and over again. After I failed, I remembered some of the questions that gave me the most trouble, and I looked up those technologies specifically, right? Like some of those things to really understand how port channeling worked, how wireless really worked, really how to do one-to-one NAT, right? Like, is there a specific order it needs to go in? Like what is it? Like, how do I configure these things the right way? In understanding the differences between layer 2 and layer 3 technologies and being able to categorize them, right? Like really understanding like of course that's a layer 2 technology. This is where frames are being switched. It said frame, it said MAC address, it said VLAN, layer 2, right? So really understanding how those things work and where they fall in the OSI or the TCP IP model is really, really important. So if you put in the time, you can pass the exam, but don't bullshit it. Don't do what I did. Do not think that you're going to go in there, sit down, and take the exam based on your experiences and things that you thought you knew about networking. Take the time, pass it, or take the time, study. You will pass it. You'll feel just as good as I did. I got more joy from passing the CCNA exam than any exam that I took in a very long time, just because of the how tough that I found it. It's not an easy one, but it is. If you're early in your career, this is one of those exams that propels you to that next level. I assure you. I work with a lot of folks, and once they were able to obtain that CCNA or that level of knowledge, they took off. So if you don't pass the first time, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, like, don't give yourself too much grief. It's okay. Just keep taking it, keep at it. If you get to the point where you're taking the exam that many times anyway, that means you're really vested. Just keep going until you pass it. And you don't have to tell anybody how many times you took it. You can just say, hey, I'm CCNA certified. Give me a job. Like, just make sure that that you put in the time and effort, and then hopefully you won't have to take the exam as many times as I did. Like I said, I only studied for about 2 months. Probably a little bit less because I was just waiting the week in between to take tests, right? Like, you can only take the exam like 6 days apart, so that gave me a little time, and I wasn't necessarily spending full time studying in between those exams, but I'd say pretty much every day I put in at least an hour of listening to the material. Let me know if this works for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, I thank you for watching. Good luck on your journey. Hopefully you don't have to take the test as many times as I did, but if you do, so what? Who cares? Take it, pass it, and then at the end of the day, you'll be CCNA certified. And you can tell people you took it 4 times, or you don't have to. Either way, you'll have your certification. So good luck. Let me know if you have any specific questions, and I'll try to help answer them. Thanks. Bye.